Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Real Podcast, where we help you improve your English one conversation at a time. I'm so excited to have you here with me today. Whether you're just starting out or looking to sharpen your skills, this podcast is for anyone who wants to learn English in a fun and easy way. Each episode will explore new vocabulary, useful phrases, and practice speaking together. So grab your headphones, relax, and let's dive into today's lesson.
Ever feel like you're stuck? Like you really want to get better at English, downloaded a ton of podcasts even.
Oh, yeah.
But then they're about as interesting as reading. Like the dictionary.
Right.
What if I told you the secret's not just learning English, it's learning about something you actually love in English.
Oh, I like where this is going.
That's what we're diving into today, ditching the textbook, folks, and finding those English podcasts that are so good, you actually get excited to hit play.
It's kind of wild how much our brains are all about connection, When we're truly into something, learning just clicks, and that goes double for language.
Okay, so let's break this down. Our mission today, to use advice from some real English learning pros and help you find that perfect podcast match. And the first tip, it's surprisingly simple. Think about what you already love listening to, but like in your own language. Seriously, I mean it right now. Just glance at your podcast app.
I'm doing it.
What's usually playing? True Crime Junkie, History Buff. Maybe you're all about those interview shows. Whatever your thing is, chances are there's an English podcast out there just waiting to be found.
And there's a reason this works so well. Think back to the last time you were totally hooked on a show.
Oh, yeah.
You couldn't wait to see what happened next, right? That's your brain loving that feeling of being engaged. And that, my friend, is way more powerful than forcing yourself to listen to something that feels like homework.
It's so true. It's like, remember trying to cram for a test last minute versus getting totally lost in a topic because you actually wanted to learn it. Our brains are just wired to hold on to info better when we're enjoying ourselves. So how do we take that love, let's say, for true crime podcasts and find its English twin? The experts we're learning from, they've got a plan, and it starts with a little self-reflection.
Ooh, I like a good self-reflection session.
Grab a pen and paper, your phone, whatever works, and jot down 3 to 5 things that really get you fired up. Don't overthink it. It could be anything from, ancient history to the latest in sustainable fashion.
Ooh, sustainable fashion podcast. That's a good one. I'm adding that to my list.
Got your list. Awesome. Now for the fun part, we're going to use those passions as our key words. But here's the trick to translate them into English. So true crime stays as true crime, but maybe history of fashion becomes your key to a whole new world of podcasts.
I'm telling you.
And don't forget about those filters on your podcast app. Narrowing down by genre, category, language, it helps cut through the noise and get you to the good stuff faster.
And this is where reviews, they become your secret weapon. They give you the inside scoop on whether a podcast is actually right for you.
Right.
Is the pace of speech okay for English learners? Do the hosts have annoying voices, that sort of thing? Are they funny, engaging, got good chemistry? Because remember, we want a podcast that feels like you're part of the conversation, not,
Not falling asleep halfway through.
Exactly.
It's like having a sneak peek before you fully commit. Reviews can save you so much time. And hey, finding a hidden gem based on a glowing recommendation, that's always a good feeling. But finding the right podcast, that's only half the battle, right? We got to make sure we're actually absorbing all that awesome English goodness. And here's where things get really interesting. One of the most surprising tips from the experts, all about multitasking.
Ooh, okay, I'm all ears. I'm the queen of multitasking.
But not in the way you might think. They actually recommend pairing your podcast listening with, get this, mindless activities.
Wait, what? Really? So I can finally fold laundry and learn English at the same time? I'm in.
Right. But there's actually a cool reason why this works. Something to do with how our brains work in what's called diffuse mode.
Diffuse mode. All right, break that down for me. Sounds kind of science-y.
I know, right? So picture this. Your brain has 2 modes, focus mode and diffuse mode. Focus mode is like a spotlight. It's great for when you got to concentrate on one specific thing, reading a textbook or trying to follow a recipe. But diffuse mode, that's more like a lantern, casting a wider net, making connections in the background, even when you're not thinking about it directly.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get it. So if I'm listening to a podcast while I'm walking the dog or whatever, my brain's still taking in the info, even if I'm not glued to every single word.
Exactly. It's like sneaking in study time without even realizing it.
This is amazing. I need to tell everyone I know about this. Diffuse mode is my new best friend.
Right. It's like a cheat code for language learning.
yeah.
But they did mention this might not work for everyone. Some folks just naturally learn better when they're laser focused.
True. Everyone's different. So what about those folks who, like, need to be really dialed in? Any tips for them?
Totally. If you're more of that focused learner, try this. Instead of just passively listening, actively engage with what you're hearing.
Okay, I like that.
Imagine yourself as part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Like, what points would you make? How would you answer the host questions?
Ooh, I like that. It's like taking mental notes to a whole other level, actually participating, even if it's just in my head.
Exactly. It's about getting your brain working a little harder, which helps that info stick. But now let's switch gears a bit and tackle a topic that tends to trip up a lot of English learners in formal English. You know, those slang words, everyday phrases, and even the occasional curse word that you won't find in a textbook.
Oh, yeah, that's a big one. You don't want to sound like a robot, but you also don't want to accidentally offend anyone, right?
Exactly. And one of the videos we watched, they had this hilarious story about a student who learned English mostly from watching stand-up comedians.
Oh, no, I can only imagine.
Right. And he was fluent, don't get me wrong, but let's just say his vocabulary was a bit on the colorful side.
It just goes to show context is everything when it comes to informal English.
It's true. And that's where things can get tricky because you don't want to sound stiff and formal, but you also don't want to like accidentally drop an F-bomb in the wrong setting, you know?
Oh, yeah, definitely not.
One of the experts used this phrase I loved, sailor's mouth.
That's a good one. Though it does make you realize that even something as seemingly simple as a curse word can mean totally different things depending on the situation.
Absolutely. It's not just the word itself, it's the entire vibe, you know?
Yeah.
Who's saying it, how they're saying it, and why. And speaking of different vibes, one of the videos actually used a pretty, shall we say, impactful word as an example to show how context can completely change the meaning of even a single word.
Ooh, okay, I'm curious now. Like, what kind of word are we talking here?
Yeah, and while we don't need to get into specifics, like on this podcast, the point they made was spot on. It's not just about the word itself, it's the whole package. Like who's saying it, why are they saying it, their tone of voice even. It all colors how that word lands, even a word that's, you know, usually considered kind of harsh.
It's like that scene in Harry Potter, right? Where Molly Weasley, sweetest mom ever, but she drops a pretty strong word when she's defending her daughter. And it's powerful because it's so unexpected from her. You totally get why she says it in that moment.
Exactly. Context is everything. And that's why just immersing yourself, even through podcasts, can be so helpful. You pick up on those little things, the tone, the way the speaker feels about the topic. It all changes things.
It's like you can read a joke in a book, right? But seeing in a comedian tell it. Their timing, their delivery, suddenly it's hilarious. Same words, way different impact. Totally. And the more you expose yourself to those real conversations, the better you get, like, not just the dictionary definition of a word, but the actual weight it carries.
It's like leveling up from, okay, I can read the sign at the store, to I get why they told that joke.
Exactly. And it's way more fun, which is kind of the whole point here, right? Learning should be enjoyable.
100%. So how do we get there? How do we go from being kind of scared of slang to actually getting it like its place in the English-speaking world?
It's a journey, for sure. Don't be afraid to start off with podcasts where the language feels a little easier, you know? I mean, interview shows, documentaries where people are talking naturally, but it's not, like, super slang heavy. And then, as you get comfy, branch out. Pay attention to how the hosts use informal language, how do the guests react, and most importantly, does it fit the overall tone?
So it's like testing the waters before you jump in.
Exactly. And while you listen, don't get too stuck on individual words. Listen to the whole flow, the way people connect their phrases, the pauses, even the laughter. Those are all part of informal English too.
Man, this makes me think about like my own first language. There are definitely phrases I use that would sound totally different coming from someone else.
For sure. Every language has those unwritten rules. And the good news, the more you hang out with English, the more those rules just kind of click.
It's like anything practice makes it feel natural.
Exactly. Don't be afraid to make mistakes along the way. That's how we all learn.
Now, before we get too deep into slang and stuff, let's rewind to something we talked about earlier. Active listening versus like just kind of hearing stuff. Because even with the most amazing podcast, if our brains are checked out, it's not doing us much good, right?
Oh, 100%. It's like the difference between just hearing a song and like really listening to a song, you know?
I like that.
When you really listen, you pick up on all the details, that cool guitar part, the background vocals.
Yes, you notice things you never did before.
And it's the same with language. When you're actively tuned in, you pick up on way more. And that's what leads to fluency.
Okay, so for anyone listening who's like, cool, but how do I do that? How do I go from zoning out to active listening? What are some things they can try, like, today?
Honestly, sometimes it's as simple as just changing your mindset, you know? Instead of just hit and play while you're doing dishes, maybe try approaching it with a little more, like, intention.
Okay, so, like, actually setting aside time for podcasts, almost like it's a mini lesson.
That's one way. But even if you're multitasking, you can still bring that energy. One technique I love is called shadowing.
Shadowing. Okay, now that sounds kind of cool. I'm into it. Tell me more.
So basically, you're trying to copy the speaker, like, as closely as you can. Their pronunciation, their intonation, everything. It's like you're their shadow.
So I'm picturing myself, headphones on, repeating everything the host says.
Right.
Maybe even trying to do their accent a little.
Exactly. It feels weird at first, I'm not going to lie, but it's like a workout for your ears and your mouth. You start noticing things you didn't before, how they say certain vowels, how their voice goes up and down for emphasis.
That's so cool. And I bet the more you do it, the more those sounds just become automatic, you know?
100%. You're training your brain to recognize and use those patterns, which is huge if you want to be fluent.
It's like when you learn a new dance move.
Right.
Like at first it's all awkward. You got to think about every step. But then the more you practice, you're just flowing with the music.
Yes. Love that analogy. And just like with dancing, the more you love the music, the more fun practice is, right? That's why finding podcasts that light you up is so key.
Makes total sense. If you're genuinely interested, your brain's going to be way more tuned in to those details, even the little ones.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to, like, play around. Try different types of podcasts, different listening techniques. Maybe shadowing works for you. Maybe it's taking notes, whatever. Just find what helps you get the most out of it and have fun.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's like the one big takeaway you'd give to our listeners who are ready to level up their English with podcasts?
Don't be afraid to get out there and experiment. Try different genres. Don't freak out if you don't understand every word. And most importantly, choose something you'll actually look forward to listening to. When you're enjoying yourself, your brain is ready to learn. Who knows? You might just find your new favorite podcast in the process.
Love it. So there you have it. Ditch the textbook. Embrace what lights you up and get ready for a whole new world of English learning, one that's effective and enjoyable. Happy listening, everyone.